Today I will be showing you my retro-modded Sony PlayStation 1. I started this project over the 2020 holiday season, but parts and accessories took a while to arrive. For this build, I replaced the PlayStation 1 case with an aftermarket transparent option, and replaced the power and analog indicators with white LEDs. After a few short weeks of patience and tinkering in the garage, I'm proud to show off the results. Follow along to see how I modified the console, controllers, what parts I used, and future plans. The first thing I did was order a lot of 4 broken PlayStation 1 consoles from eBay. This set me back $75, but gave me a variety of parts to choose from, including power supplies, optical drives, motherboards, and case pieces. I also ordered a couple of known good consoles. I am planning to retrobrite some case pieces and build another in a future video, so I wanted to make sure that I had plenty of parts on hand. I had a saved search set on eBay and waited for one of these transparent cases to come up for sale. I really wanted the crystal version, but settled for the smoke color instead. It was a bit cheaper. I am happy with the results. This case shipped all the way from Venezuela and took a couple of weeks to arrive. Perhaps the easiest parts to obtain were the transparent controller and memory card. They are both OEM Sony parts. I plan to swap out the red analog indicator LED for a white one to match the case, and no modifications were needed for the memory card. The first step was to crack into some of these damaged PlayStations. I started with one that had some pretty obvious signs of water damage. You could see from the connectors there's a little bit of corrosion on the contacts. Upon inspection, we can see that this console is completely trashed. This will be useful as a source of parts for case pieces, and I ended up stealing the logo from the lid of this one. The second PS1 was in better shape. This one has a parallel port on the back and had some markings that it might have been in a thrift store at one point. After removing the top cover, I was happy to find that this had a power supply with a 5mm through-hole LED, contrary to the others that have a surface mount LED. This makes it easier for me to do my LED swap mod. This ended up being the power supply donor for this build. Unfortunately, the rest of the parts are not in tremendous condition, and there is a little bit of water damage on the right side of the internals. So I went ahead and started removing the power supply. I detached the power supply cable and removed the board from the donor unit. I was pleased to find that it was in good physical condition with no water damage. I did a quick test of the output voltages to check for anything out of the ordinary, and everything checked out. With the power supply selected, it was time to replace the green LED with a white one. I warmed up my soldering iron and desoldered the existing LED. It seems that the solder used in PlayStation 1s will melt at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which means that it is likely a lead-based solder. Good old pre-Rojas electronics, really easy to work on. I soldered the new LED in place, being careful to match the polarity of the old one. If you look closely at an LED, you can find the cathode and anode by looking at the size of the lead inside the package. I just compared them to each other and made sure that they were the same. I snipped the leads off at the board and the system was ready to go. So a quick power test later, and you can see that everything was working just fine. Mission accomplished. Next, I installed the power supply in the new case. This is easy with just 2 screws near the AC input connector. But before that, a quick test of the light pipe to see how the new LED behaves in the transparent case. Success! It looks great. Later on, I actually ended up putting a little heat shrink around the LED to avoid that kind of swooping pattern underneath, but for the most part, I was really happy with this. So let's go ahead and put the screws in. Installing screws in the new case was tough because the plastic has not been threaded yet. It is important to be somewhat careful to avoid cracking this old plastic. Even though it's new to me and has never been used before, it has been sitting in the original packaging for decades, and who knows how well this plastic will hold up to the forces applied by installing screws. A little care is definitely going to help in this case. The next step was to find a good condition motherboard. I decided to use the one from my mod chip unit since it is known good and the mod chip has already been installed. Saved me a bit of time. I went through the process of removing the optical drive and motherboard from this case. I would end up reusing the parts from this console to finish the build. I was hoping to use more of the damaged consoles, but once I had found out that this one was in good shape and I had, committed to breaking it down into pieces, it was kind of a no-brainer to just use up all the parts. As you can see, things are in excellent condition here. Removing a couple screws was really straightforward, and I was able to get this installed in the new case in just a few minutes. With the motherboard seated in place, it was time to install the top shield and controller ports. Nothing too special about this, everything went super smoothly. Next, I connected the power supply and mainboard together. The last internal component to be installed is the optical drive. I had ordered some spare drives from China since these are the known Achilles heel of the PlayStation 1. Unfortunately, those replacement parts were also damaged. I'll need to find a better source, but for now I'm using the drive from my known good system. Here you can see I'm trying out one of my favorite games, Motor Racer, and everything seems to be working well. The disc spins up, and once it spins up, it spins to an even higher speed, which is usually a good sign that things are working properly. Later on, I went to go try things out and found that those drives that I had ordered from China were not working, so I ended up switching things around a bit. But in the end, I did get a working drive, so that's great. The final part of the assembly was to install the top case. This is another example of where some care is required when the screws are installed into the case for the first time. This completed the console build, everything was done, and it was time to move on to the controller. The first thing I did was remove the screws from the back of the controller. This is a pretty simple mod, I just need to remove the main controller PCB to get at the LED so that I can swap it out. With the controller opened, I found a flaw in my plan. I had ordered rectangular LEDs for this mod, assuming that they would be directly visible from the outside of the case. This controller actually has a small 3mm LED with a light pipe. Interestingly, I ordered two of these transparent controllers, and one of them has a direct view LED and the other has a light pipe. The light pipe variant actually worked out better by providing a medium to diffuse the light through rather than it being directly visible to the user's eyes. So what I ended up doing was ordering a second controller with the same light pipe configuration, and I'll build another one later. The replacement rectangular LEDs that I ordered are a bit taller than the 3mm red LED, but they still fit in the available space. I sanded the LED down a bit to better diffuse the light and then proceeded to install it. With the new LED installed, I closed up the case. First, I reseated the Vibe motors and then reinstalled the case screws. If you are ever reinstalling screws in tapped plastic holes, it's a good idea to give the screws a backwards turn until you feel a small click. It will reuse the existing threads when you tighten it back down, which avoids unnecessary wear on the case plastics. With the controllers all buttoned up, it was time for a comparison. The new LED looks great. I am super happy with the results. As you can tell, the new white LED is quite a bit brighter than the red one, but the light pipe avoids that being shown directly into the user's eyes, so it's actually not that bad. And you can see that the white light kind of penetrates through the front of the controller and through the back as well. I think it looks really neat, especially when it's being used in the dark. I think it provides a really nice touch. So that is my retro-modded Sony PlayStation 1. I had a blast putting this together, working on it for a few weeks now. Ordered the parts over the holidays. Some parts arrived, some arrived a little late. Finally had a chance to put it all together in the garage, and I think it turned out super. You're probably wondering why I'm interested in an old console like this. One, I have some nostalgia for it. When I was a kid, I played a lot of games on PlayStation 1 and I really enjoyed it. Two, I've actually been writing an operating system for this console for a few weeks now, and it's been a really good time putting that together. I compiled GCC for MIPS, and anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff we're going on there. Haven't shared it with anybody yet, but as it comes together, I probably will. So if you want to see that, feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, leave a comment below, and if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. I would really appreciate that. That's all I've got for now, and so with that, I will see you next time.